What people regarded as a pose on my part was actually an expression of my need to assert my own true nature. And it was precisely what people regarded as my true self, which was a masquerade.
In his autobiographical novel, Confessions of a Mask, Mishima describes his early childhood. He was born Kimitaki Haraoka, the son of a civil servant. In the first weeks of his life, he was taken away from his mother, effectively kidnapped by his grandmother, a forceful personality descended from a high-class samurai family. He was forced to spend most of his childhood confined to his grandmother's sick room. He wasn't allowed to go out and mix with children of his own age. He consoled himself by reading his grandmother's books, and among them were the fairy tales of Oscar Wilde and Hans Christian Andersen.
From among Andersen's many fairy tales, only his rose elf threw deep shadows over my heart. Only that beautiful youth who, while kissing the rose given him as a token by his sweetheart, was stabbed to death and decapitated by a villain with a big knife. My heart's leaning toward death and night and blood would not be denied.
In later years, Mishima was educated at the Gakushuin, a famous school for children of the nobility. A dull student at first, he graduated top of his class and was presented with a gold watch by the emperor in person. At the outbreak of the Pacific War, Mishima was 16. In Confessions of a Mask, he describes his excitement at the idea of war and what he saw as the probability of dying a glorious death. He looked back on these years as the best of his life and constantly sought to recapture the spirit of the time. At his school, normal studies were abandoned in favor of the martial arts. Towards the end of the war, the students of Mishima's school were sent to work in a factory making aircraft for kamikaze.
This great factory worked on a mysterious system of production costs, taking no account of the economic dictum that capital investment should produce a return. It was dedicated to a monstrous nothingness. No wonder, then, that each morning the workers had to recite a mystic oath. I have never seen such a strange factory. In it, all the techniques of modern science and management, together with the exact and rational thinking of many superior brains, were dedicated to a single end: death.
And now, for the first time, the Navy releases actual films of these amazing kamikaze attacks. Films the world waited to see.
In 1945, the Japanese were faced with the first ever invasion of their country.
The air raids were becoming more frequent. I was uncommonly afraid of them, and yet at the same time I somehow looked forward to death impatiently with a sweet expectation. I thought that if by any chance I should attain glorious death in battle, how ill it would have become me, this would be a truly ironical end for my life, and I could laugh sarcastically at it forever from the grave. And when the siren sounded, that same me would dash for the air raid shelters faster than anyone.
Everyone who was 17 or 18 and happened to be male thought he was going to die in battle. That was just the universal assumption. Then he went to his army medical in the closing months of the war, and he faked a tubercular condition. He was rejected, and he never saw service in the imperial forces. And the common view is, I certainly share it, that he regretted that all his life. He had somehow missed his moment of glory.
What I wanted was to die among strangers, untroubled, beneath a cloudless sky. If such were the case, wasn't the army ideal for my purpose? Why had I looked so frank as I lied to the army doctor? Why had I said that I'd been having a slight fever for over half a year, that my shoulder was painfully stiff, that I spit blood, and even last night I had been soaked by a night sweat? Why had I run so when I was through the barracks gate?
As the war ended, having missed his chance to die gloriously, Mishima withdrew in the face of the desolation around him. He made no attempt to help in the reconstruction of the country, but instead shut himself away with his books and devoted his efforts to his writing. In 1946, he received the sponsorship of the distinguished writer Kawabata, who was later to win the Nobel Prize. With Kawabata's help, his career took off. Confessions of a Mask was published when he was 24. It was an instant success and established Mishima as a literary star. A theme which recurs throughout Mishima's writing is an obsession with a mysterious and threatening notion of beauty. In one of his most acclaimed books, The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, the hero makes love to a girl for the first time, but in this, as in every other critical moment of his life, he is overwhelmed by a vision of the temple.
At first, it was as small as a miniature painting, but in an instant it grew larger until it completely buried the world that surrounded me and filled every nook and cranny of this world. Just as in that delicate model which I had once seen, the Golden Temple had been so huge that it had encompassed everything else. It filled the world like some tremendous music, and this music itself became sufficient to occupy the entire meaning of the world. The Golden Temple, which sometimes seemed to be so utterly indifferent to me and to tower into the air outside myself, had now completely engulfed me and had allowed me to be situated within its structure. The girl from the lodging house flew away into the distance like a tiny speck of dust.
Mishima was greatly influenced by European writers. His library was full of Western books, which he had carefully read and annotated.
He probably grew up, as many Japanese children do today, with as many Western books, even more Western books as part of their education than Japanese books. Treasure Island is as well known to a Japanese child as it is to any English child. Later on, as he grew up, he became interested in various English writers, but his first foreign language was German. And he was interested in Rilke, interested in various German novelists too. I think the most important influence of European literature on him, however, came from French literature.
He maintained that Nietzsche was a great influence, that Mann was a great influence, that Racine was a great influence. But ultimately, he was one of those Japanese writers who's very eclectic, who drew from his own tradition and from the Western tradition.
Mishima admired the West, and he craved recognition by the West. To achieve it, he had to have his books translated, and he cultivated friendships with foreign writers resident in Tokyo.
Mishima's sentences are full of complexities, involutions, and they are filled with unusual words, most unusual words. He knew the exact name for everything. He was very eager to be recognized. I think he would have done anything to get the Nobel Prize. It's a pity he didn't get it. At one occasion, I had agreed to translate a certain book of his, and when I showed signs of taking too much time over it, he asked if he might get somebody else to do it, and I said, of course. But it was most unusual. I think it was a general feeling of eagerness. Perhaps he already thought in terms of dying young or desirability of dying young. He wanted to be known in the world, recognized in the world as soon as possible.
October 1968. The prize has been won by Kawabata.
そういう意味でね、国際的に非常に僕はいいことだと思いますね。
Yukio desperately wanted the prize. He was in line to get it. But at a very late stage, his one-time mentor went to him, this is a very little-known story, and said, will you support me? And Yukio stepped down for the prize to be given to a much older man on the theory that in time, Yukio would get it.
僕のようなのが日本文学の代表だと思われるところは困るですね。
どうして困るんですか？全然困ることない。
それ困るな、一番。
いやいや。いや、それがですね。